Thanks so much for being here. And thank you, Mayor, for being here. Mayor has a very busy schedule tonight, and so we want to get right to it and have a conversation with the mayor before he has to leave. Maybe you can talk a little bit about why you decided to be a part of the project.
Well, first of all, I've known Kevin for a long time, and he is one of America's humble heroes and has been for our entire journey together. He's done extraordinary things, extraordinary contributions. But Covenant House, it sits right in Newark, New Jersey. It has a location right in Newark, New Jersey, with a heart and a spirit and a soul that does so much for our city. And I've met the kids and young people that come through it, and I was very moved. So knowing you and knowing about Covenant House, it was a no-brainer. But I felt very privileged to write the foreword for it, because it gave me a chance to recognize the fact that my dad, but for the kindness of others, would have been homeless himself. He was born to a single mother, very poor. My father now exaggerates it even more dramatically. So he was not poor. He was just P-O. He couldn't afford the other two letters. But it was an extraordinary community that was very intact and very watchful of the children. And my father basically was taken in by another family, the Pilgrims, who, through extraordinary love, kept my father on a trajectory forward. So, and when he was going to go to college, there was people in the community that put dollar bills together to help him afford his first semester's tuition, so college became a reality for him. So all these things, which I call the conspiracy of love, that have happened that made me who I am today. But it really starts with the young people. And what bothers me is about our society is we talk so dramatically and in such a negative fashion about the adults who fill our prisons. And we don't realize that every one of those adults was a child who we could have done more for to prevent a lot of the challenges they face as an adult. And you know, I think it's Frederick Douglass who said, you know, it's easier to raise our strong children than to heal broken men. And so I just feel a real urgency in America that we do not prioritize our children as much as we should.
Tina's been saying during the book tour that her favorite part of the book is your foreword, which is lovely because we worked for 2.5 years on the book. But it's so moving because it's so from the heart. And this week you're doing something else from the heart. You're engaged in the SNAP Challenge. Maybe you can talk with folks a little bit about what the SNAP Challenge is and why you're doing this.
Well, so my staff teases me. I was up late with my girlfriend, Twitter, and I said, when is our mayor going to get a life? But it was a Sunday night where I was before I was going to bed, and I was just going back and forth. And for those of you who use social media, people just throw out just things that are dumb, frankly. But this was, I was getting into sort of an intellectual question about the role of government, and the person said that government should not provide for the nutrition of children. And it really struck a chord to me because I really don't think people think about what that really would mean. And we don't realize that we live in a society that if we make in small amounts of investments early, we won't have to make the big investments late. And that we all, in fact, are deeply invested in the success of kids, because the more successful our children are, the more our economy grows. Artists, teachers, professors, and entrepreneurs, you name it, are all the children. In fact, the greatest natural resource we have in America is our children, but yet we leave it undercultivated. So, long story short, late at night, this woman says this, and I go back at her, and she goes back at me, and I say finally, well, why don't we see what it's like to live on food stamps or the SNAP program? And so I went to bed thinking, you know, no big deal, and I woke up and it was a big story. And so I called my staff and I said, guess what I'm doing? And so, but it was a powerful thing because Newark is one of 14 cities in America that has a food policy director. And I really think all cities should have it. And we had already done a lot of work on trying to expand affordable, healthy options. And the more I talked with my food policy director, I said, you know what? This is a great thing if we can not only raise the levels of compassion and understanding and dispel bad stereotypes about SNAP and families that are on SNAP, and focus them instead on the realities of that, but also about the policy changes we can be making at a local level to empower, to address food insecurity, to address food and nutrition deserts, to expand more healthy options. And so that's really what we're doing this week. And I'll say this last thing, because today I had a very poignant moment where we also have to think as our society as a whole. I had a poignant moment today where I had security guards in my office, and we were talking with them because these are guys, some of them making $7 and change an hour, and many of them working overtime to try to make more money, but still qualify for programs like SNAP. And so here we are allowing many of our employees, especially as I was saying behind the curtain, I think the curtain's there to block the sex and love section. Right there. Do you notice that is the one that's curtained off here? You know, it's like in 7-Eleven, the line across certain magazines. So you guys should put your book on the sex aisle because it would sell much better.
We often say we should have called the book 50 Shades of Homelessness.
Yeah,
it
would have sold a lot better.
It would have.
So the security, sorry, you guys have such dirty minds. Get back to the subject here at hand. Get out of the gutter. But these guys, the poignant testimonies they were telling us, because we live in a society where here are frontline first responders. These guys tell stories about intervening in petty crime. We had one of the buildings that was targeted by some people who had terroristic intents, and they're on the front lines of this, and yet we can only pay them $7 and change an hour, and they have no benefits, they have no retirement security. One guy was telling me he's worked for 10 years, no health care. If he gets sick, he has to try to come to work through the sickness, and that's not the America that I think of. And so I'm really hoping this week, just to finish the answer, the overly long answer, is to really bring more attention to these problems. And right now, this session, Congress is going to be debating cuts in the SNAP program. And in this time of austerity, we can't be dumb and cut things that ultimately provide long-term benefits that are really not entitlements, they're really investments in us and in our society. And we should begin to prioritize these things federally as well as our actions locally.
Mayor, you were speaking in your foreword about the small actions that people took to help your father. We talk in the book quite a bit about the small actions that people take that can help homeless young people. Can you talk a little bit about how that works in a city?
Yeah, well, first of all, I've had lots of conversations with people who, quote unquote, have made it, and when they were in tough times, from famous people like Tyler Perry, who was homeless, living in a car, to people I know throughout my community who have gotten broken drug addictions, who have dealt with brutal hatred because they came out of the closet at a young age. All these stories, and it's amazing to me that everybody, including Tyler Perry, has these stories about how one person's small act of kindness was a difference maker for them. And it gives me chills to think about that we all have that power, that the biggest thing we actually do in any day is probably could be a small act of kindness to someone else. And so the vulnerability and the fragility of life, you really get to see up close and personal in cities like ours here in New York and like ours in Newark, New Jersey, and how it doesn't take that much effort to be there for a kid. And I see, and I was very happy during Sandy, we were able to do some things to raise through Covenant House and the cooperation of some extraordinary people at LinkedIn to raise a lot of money, because it actually doesn't take that much money to give a person a doorway of hope. And the last thing I'll say on this is, you know, for me, I get very upset because when I first became mayor, I had a metaphor that I clung to. I used to tell people, because I'm such an optimistic, hopeful person, I used to tell people I'm a prisoner of hope. When we walked into City Hall 7 years ago, there were so many challenges, and I would try to gird my team up and say, we're prisoners of hope. We can do nothing but hope. Now, 7 years later, my metaphor has completely changed, because I see powerfully transformative things happening in every sector of our city, from the largest parks expansion in a century, from a down housing market, the creativity of my team and other philanthropists to double the production of affordable housing. First time in 60 years, Newark's population isn't going down, it's actually going up. First new hotels in our downtown in 40 years, built by Newarkers, employing our people in our city. And so my metaphor has changed. I tell people I'm no longer a prisoner of hope. I'm hope unhinged, because I now believe in my heart of hearts that there is no problem, poverty, child homelessness, there's no problem we can't solve. It's not a matter of can we, It's a matter of, do we have the collective will? And I'll give you one example with kids that drives me a lot, is we have tens of thousands of